You're putting in the time and you sit down at your instrument regularly and you feel like you're working hard, but nothing's really changing. And what's frustrating is you cannot figure out why. In this video, I'm going to show you exactly what's going wrong and how you can fix it so that you can start seeing real results in your playing. Most people, when they sit down to practice, do one of two things. They either run through everything that they know, so I'm talking about their chords and their scales and maybe a song or two, just to feel like they've covered all the bases. Or they find something that they enjoy playing. Maybe they'll even bring out a lead sheet and then they're just going to play it. Both of those feel like practice, but neither of them really is. And here's the difference. I'm going to show you exactly what I mean here. So say you're working on a song like All the Things You Are. So most people would probably just sit at their instrument and play through the entire tune. So maybe they'll do something like using correct voicings and everything, embellishing, improvising. So I'm just playing the song and that felt okay, right? And maybe, yes, there were a couple of rough spots and maybe some things that I could have done better there, but overall it was fine. So you know what? You then do it again and again and again. And then at the end of 30 minutes, you've probably played through the tune maybe 5, 6 or 7 times, and then you feel like you've practiced. But here is the question. What specifically got better there? If you cannot answer that question, then you weren't really practicing, you were simply performing to yourself. So the reason that most people practice this way is that nobody actually ever taught them any differently. So when we learn a piece of music, we run through it until it feels smooth and then we call it practice. So that approach works nicely for classical repertoire where the goal is to reproduce something as accurately as possible or to respect the wishes of the composer. But jazz doesn't quite work like that. In jazz, you're not really trying to reproduce something. You are trying to internalize a language. That's the ultimate goal. And internalizing a language requires a completely different approach. Think about how you learned how to speak. You didn't study the entire English language at once. You didn't run through every word every morning. You learned just specific things in context and then you used them. And then along the way you got feedback and you just kept moving on. And that's exactly how jazz is supposed to be learned too. So it's just one thing at a time with focus and with intention. The problem is most people will sit down with no clear target. They might have a vague idea that they want to get better, but better at what exactly? That vagueness is what kills progress. So, What does intentional practice actually look like? It starts with one question before you sit down. And the question is, what is the one thing I'm working on today? Not 5 things or 4 things, not everything. You just have to answer the question, what is the one thing that I'm working on today? Let me give you a concrete example. So let's say your target for this week is guide tones. Guide tones are basically the 3rd and the 7th of each chord. So if I look at a D minor 7, the guide tones are the 3rd, F, and the 7th, C. So on a D minor 7, the F and the C are the important tones that really give the chord its quality. So I could improvise on my D minor 7 using just my guide tones. So I could use this F and C, or I could use C and F like that. So I could play any rhythm on those and go back and forth between them. Okay, so guide tones give me a sense of the quality of the chord. And if I really want to make my way through the chord changes, or to make my chord changes very clear, I've got to know my guide tones. So these are very useful for meaningful solos and correct sounding solos. Okay, so I found my guide tones on my D minor 7. What if I say to myself, hang on, what do those look like on a G7? So here's my G7. Okay, and the question to ask is, what is the 3rd and 7th of G7? And the 3rd is B, and the 7th is F. So I could also practice the B and the F, guide tones for my G7 chord. Okay, and then I could say, okay, what about C major 7? What are my guide tones for C major 7? And the 3rd of C is E, the 7th is B. Okay, so alright, so since I've done the D minor 7, the G7, and the C major 7, those obviously make a 2-5-1. So what would guide tones sound like in a 2-5-1? So from chord 2, I might play that, and then when I go to chord 5, hopefully you can see there that the guide tones for my 2 chord were F and C, right? But when I'm going to the 5 chord, it's now F and B. So the only thing that's changing really is that the C is becoming a B. And in music, that's what we call voice leading. Okay, and voice leading is really how jazz harmony works. So if you want to play smoothly, this is a good foundation. So basically what I'm saying is guide tones are very important, because not only do they give the chord its quality, but when going from one chord to another, they provide smooth voice leading. So just by a change of one note, the chord changes from a D minor 7 to a G7, and even from this G7 to C major 7, if I just move one note, I'm now playing my guide tones for a C major 7. So the F just moved to E, and boom, guide tones. So what would happen if instead of me just running through a song, what if I just said, let me practice some guide tone soloing over a 2-5-1? What would that sound like? You know, so what if I said, see, that's nice. Or I could say, okay, so that's some guide tone soloing. I could even take this a step further and say, wait, what if I did this on an actual song? What if I did this on something like All the Things You Are? Could I actually play that song and just solo using my guide tones? Remember here, you're not trying to make this sound impressive. The goal is to just make guide tones sound automatic. So we are working on just the one thing. And that's what we call intentional practice, because you know exactly what you're working on. And as you're playing, you can also hear when it's working and when it isn't. And then at the end of your session, you can actually point to something specific that's actually moved about your playing. Okay, so here it is over all the things you are. So I could say, right, that's actually more difficult than it looks there. There's one chord where I had no idea what I was doing, but then that really helps me to know exactly what I need to work on. Okay, so the beautiful thing about target practice, like I said, you can see when you're actually making progress and when you're not. And there I quickly became aware of the one chord change that I'm not entirely sure of in the song. So in my practice session, I'm going to really focus on that, and I will know at the end of my practice session whether I've actually made progress or not. Now here's what I want you to understand about this approach. It's not just about practicing better, it's about how you think about learning jazz overall, because most students treat jazz like this giant checklist. You know, you've got voicings, scales, styles like bebop or free jazz or hard pop, bossa nova, salsa and all that, or theory, transcription, and all these thousands of topics, right? And then they feel like they need to be working through these things and just ticking them off, but doing them actually simultaneously. So what this creates is some sort of paralysis. You end up maybe doing just a little bit of everything and not really getting anywhere with any of it. So not even just one thing. So what I like to teach instead is what's typically known as the target approach. And when you're using the target approach, it's one focus at a time. And one thing that you're developing this week, whether that's guide tones or maybe it's a specific voicing, it could be a rhythmic concept, it could be embellishing a melody, it could be learning the melody, like in the video that I did last week, you know, and then everything in your practice session simply connects to that one target. So it sounds almost too simple, but this is genuinely how progress happens. Not by covering more ground or going wide, it's actually by going deeper into less material. So the players who develop the fastest aren't the ones who practiced the longest. Yes, sure, the people like Charlie Parker was known for practicing a long time. Sonny Rollins is a practicer. He practiced under the bridge. He still practices, you know, quite a lot. Coltrane used to practice all the time. But when you really look at it, those who develop the fastest are those who practice with the most intention. So they're working on something specific. So if this concept resonated with you, I want to invite you to something. So on April the 30th, which is International Jazz Day, I am going to be doing a free live masterclass called The 5 Mistakes That Jazz Musicians Make When Learning Jazz Piano That Keep Them Stuck There for Years. So this right here, this idea of not having focus, not having a target, and trying many things is just one of the 5 mistakes that we make. And we are going to go through all 5 mistakes in detail. So including this one, we're going to go into more detail, and I'm going to show you exactly how to fix each one. It is completely free, and I'm going to put a link in the description. This will be on Zoom, so please make sure that you sign up for this one, and I would really love to see you there, and please feel free to come and join me on that. If you found this video useful, please share it with someone who's been struggling with their practice on any instrument, actually. It might be exactly what they need to hear. And if you're not yet subscribed to the channel, please do so, so that you can just stay in touch and you can help this channel to grow. If you like the video, give it a thumbs up, and I hope to see you in the next one.